Random thoughts. If you didn't know, East Africa has some of the oldest continuously inhabited cities. And some of these cities can be at the top list of the world oldest continuously inhabited cities. And this is information that's often not shared or talked about. And most of the oldest continuously inhabited cities in East Africa are found in Somalia. Now, of course, a conflict that has gone on for a little bit over that years has seemed to cloud history and heritage of the Somali people that go back over 2,000 years. And that's a sad situation, to be honest. Of course, there are many other cities outside of Somalia that have been inhabited for a very long time. So it's not only Somalia that has some of the oldest continuously inhabited cities in East Africa. Ethiopia has a good number of similar cities. Now, for example, Aksum was founded something around 7th century BCE. That's close to 3,000 years ago. Now, as I've said, in this video, I'm going to talk about the oldest continuously inhabited cities in Somalia. And I was reading a document that many believe was written maybe in the first 50 years of AD, counting of years. This document is known as the Periplus of the Erythraean Sea. Now, this is a document that was written by someone many believe was a merchant, and he was a Greek or maybe a Roman merchant from Venice. And this merchant seems like traveled a lot around the world, mostly in the Indian Ocean, because he writes a very detailed document providing what we can say instructions or guides to anyone who wants to do business along the East African coast and maybe the Arabian Peninsula, going all the way to India. The writer is not actually known, but some of the things that have been written in these documents are very accurate descriptions that have been proven through other means, for example, study of archaeological sites. Now, using this document, we get to see some of the cities that existed in East Africa, especially along the coast of Somalia. And many of these cities are still around, almost 2,000 years later. And of course, when this document was written, these cities were already established. It's not like that's the time they were established, so they are older than 2,000 years. Now, one of the cities or towns that is mentioned in this document is a town that is named Avalite. Now, Avalite, of course, is a name that we might not know in this era, or it's not a name that many might recognize, even historians. But this is the name that a city we know today as Zeila used to be known by. At least this is the name that maybe we can say the Greeks and maybe the Roman merchants gave this city, or maybe that's what it was actually called then. But then over time, the name changed and it became Zeila. Now, Zeila is a city that it still exists to some extent in some form. Then we can say it's somewhere on the list of the world's oldest continuously inhabited cities. And according to the Periplus of the Erythraean Sea, there were so many goods that used to come to Avalite. And also there were many other things that were taken out of Avalite and went to Europe and maybe to Arabia. In that document, it is mentioned that some of the things that were imported to Avalite included glass. There was also clothes and wheat and wine and tin. But also some of the things that were exported included spices, some form of perfumes of some sort and things like that. And also animal skins and things like that. And then in that document, the writer describes the people of Avalite that they were a little bit unruly. I don't know why he wrote that down. That's the perception, at least he got of the people of Avalite. So Avalite is Zeila, and Zeila is, you can say, still around. The other city he talks about is the city of Malaw. This city imported or would accept products like tunics and iron and some other stuff. But this city would also export things like gold and silver and honey. Now, Malaw is the city that later on came to be known as Berbera. Now, Berbera is still around. Some sort of it still exists. So, yeah, it still qualifies to be one of the oldest continuously inhabited cities in East Africa, and we can say the world. Now, the other city that he mentioned is the city of Mundus. Now, Mundus, of course, we don't have that name now. But it has been recognized that the city of Mundus is what came to be known as the town of Hayes in Somalia, along the coast. There is no major town around that place as of now, but it was occupied until not very long ago. Another city he mentions is Mosulon. It's been recognized that Mosulon is a town that came to be known as El Hayo in Somalia, along the coast again. And this city existed, and it talks of some of the things that used to be imported into the city or into the town, and some of the things that would be exported out. He mentions, for example, there was something called cassia that used to be exported in large quantities from this city or from this town, and he says it needed large ships. I didn't find out what that actually is. You can tell me in the comment section what cassia is. And he also talks of spices, perfumes, tortoise shell, and mokrotus. There were also ivory and things like that, that were exported out of Mosulon or El Hayo. Now, another town that he mentions in the document is Oone. Now, Oone is the same town that the Egyptians called Poet or Punt, and it came to be known mostly as Punt. And today we have Puntland that has been named, of course, in recognition of this historical town that existed thousands of years. This city has been identified through other studies that it has been around maybe beginning the 16th century BCE. That's a long time ago. That's a very long time ago. That's like 3,000 at least years ago. That's a long time that this city has been around. Now, in the most recent name the town went by is Afun, and it's along the Somali coast. This document, it talks of things that, of course, were exported out of the town. Cassia is one of them, perfume, and something called chrysanthemums. I don't know what that is. And some of these things went to Egypt, and some of these things went to Arabia, and some of these things, of course, went to Europe, from where this person who wrote this document came from. He makes a note, and he says that this place was not ruled, but governed by its own tyrants. So it basically says it didn't have, which is a little bit confusing, because whether it's a tyrant or a republic, whatever it is ruled. It has a government of some sort. But he leaves that comment there, or that note. Now, the next city he talks about, or town, is Sarapion. Now, Sarapion is mentioned also by another document called Geographia, written by Ptolemy. Now, Sarapion is Mogadishu. And this, of course, this city has been around for over 2,000 years at least, because, as I have said, this document is written at the beginning of maybe AD counting, which is like 2,000 years ago. So at that point, the city was still a thriving city that people would write in records. Travelers will have to make notes about its existence. That tells you Mogadishu has been around for a very, very long time. And then the other city he mentions is Nikon, or is a town. Nikon, of course, was to the south of Mogadishu, along the coast again. And now Nikon is what has come to be known as Burgabo in Jubaland. And it was also an active trading center, we can say, or town. It still exists, some sort of it still exists. It was a port where products or goods will be brought in, and then products from the mainland Somalia, and most likely from the rest of East Africa, would be put into ships and then taken to Arabia and to Europe, to Egypt, and to India, and most of the other parts of the ancient world that traded with East Africa. Now, the document talks of another town that doesn't exist today, more, in fact, than it talks about Zanzibar. In fact, Zanzibar, I don't think is mentioned that much. It talks about Raptor. Now, Raptor is a name that I've come across in Nairobi. There is a road called Raptor Road, and it's a road I used to pass through a lot. And of course, I never asked myself where did the name Raptor came from. But turns out Raptor was a city or a town or a trading center that existed somewhere to the southern part of Tanzania, along the coast. And it had people from all over the world come there. It was established by, in fact, not people from the nearby land. It was established by people who came from elsewhere. And seems like during this time, the people who live are close to that part of East Africa did not exist, did not live there. These are people who came later, the so-called Bantu people had not moved in at that point. It was different types of people who lived on that land, and it used to be called Azania. It is unfortunate that the cities and towns in East Africa that have been around for 2,000, 3,000 years and are still existing today and they're still inhabited today are not talked about a lot more because that's something. It says something about the people of the land. Those are my random thoughts.